strategies of inquiry. Under the quantitative research design, we have one, descriptive research. This design is concerned with describing the nature, characteristics, and components of the population or a phenomenon. There is no manipulation of variables or search for a cause and effect related to the phenomenon. This design attempts to find general attributes or attributes of the presently existing situation and determine the frequency with which it occurs. Descriptive research is used if, for example, you want to know how many hours senior high school students spend in social media, the number of malnourished students who failed in the achievement test, and how healthy is the food served during recess in the public school. It describes a certain phenomenon. For example, ascertaining the level of satisfaction of the clients. Survey research provides a quantitative or numeric description of trends, attitudes, or opinions of a population by studying a sample of that population. It includes cross-sectional and longitudinal studies using questionnaires of structured interviews for data collection with the intent of generalizing from a sample to a population. That's according to Bobby, 1990. Example, a study of factors affecting student attrition in one small liberal arts college. So for example, in our country, a survey that measures the trust rating of our highest official. How many percent still trust the executive, the legislative, and the judicial body? Experimental research. It seeks to determine if a specific treatment influences an outcome. This impact is assessed by providing a specific treatment to one group and withholding from another, and then determining how both groups scored on an outcome. Experiments include true experiments with a random assignment of subjects to treatment conditions and quasi-experiments that use non-randomized design. Included within quasi-experiments are single-subject designs. For example, an experimental study on the effectiveness of multimedia in college English teaching, the effect of small classes on instruction. The major characteristics of experimental research that distinguishes it from all other types of research is that researchers manipulate the independent variable. An experiment usually involves two groups of subjects, an experimental group and a control group or a comparison group. Experimental group receives a treatment of some sort, such as a new textbook or a different method of teaching. Control group receives no treatment, or the comparison group receives a different treatment. So for example, a single subject design. This involves multiple observation of a single individual. The target behavior of a single individual is established over time and is referred to as a baseline behavior. The baseline behavior is assessed, the treatment provided, and then the treatment is withdrawn. So we have the baseline A, treatment B, and baseline A. Post-test only control group design. Here's another true experimental design. This design controls for any confounding effects of a pre-test and is a popular experimental design. The participants are randomly assigned to groups. A treatment is given only to the experimental group, and both groups are measured on the post-test. Correlational research. It is the systematic investigation of the nature of relationships or associations between and among variables without necessarily investigating into causal reasons underlying them. In short, correlational research is not concerned with cause and effect. Instead, it only focuses on correlation or association. It is also concerned with the extent of relationship that exist between or among the variables. Examples. Pre-board examination results can be used to predict performance in the licensure examination for teachers. Then, the higher the pre-board grade, the higher most likely be the score in the LET. Correlational research is employed if you like to know, for example, if the following factors are related to each other: sex and mathematical ability, marriage and cancer recovery, occupation and lifespan. Causal comparative research. It is also known as ex post facto or after the fact research. This kind of research derives conclusions from observations and manifestations that already occurred in the past and now compared to some dependent variables. It discusses why and how a phenomenon occurs. For example, a researcher is interested in how weight influences stress coping levels of adults. Here, the subjects would be separated into different groups: underweight, normal weight, and overweight, as their stress coping levels measured. This is an ex post facto design because a pre-existing characteristic, which is the weight, was used to form the groups. Let us now go to the different strategies under the qualitative research. First, we have ethnography. It is a strategy of inquiry in which the researcher studies an intact group in a natural setting over a prolonged period of time by collecting primarily observational and interview data. The research process is flexible and typically evolves contextually in response to the lived realities encountered in the field setting. Lecomte and Schensel, 1999. For example, The Everyday Lives of Men, an ethnographic investigation of young adult male identity. Case studies are a strategy of inquiry in which the researcher explores in depth a program, event, activity, process, or one or more individuals. Cases are bounded by time and activity, and researchers collect detailed information using a variety of data collection procedures over a sustained period of time. Stake, 1995. For example, managing school behavior, a qualitative case study. We also have phenomenological research. It is a strategy of inquiry in which the researcher identifies the essence of human experiences about a phenomenon, as described by participants. Understanding the lived experiences marks phenomenology as a philosophy, as well as a method. And the procedure involves studying a small number of subjects through extensive and prolonged engagement to develop patterns and relationships of meaning. Mostakas, 1994. In this process, the researcher brackets or sets aside his or his own experiences in order to understand those of the participants in the study. For example, a phenomenological study of the experiences of helping professionals with learning disabilities. So those are the different strategies for inquiry, from quantitative strategies to qualitative strategies.